detailed land titling process. Under the Amerindian land titling project, a community can apply for a land title and a village can also submit an application for extension. A community applying for a land title must have been in existence for at least 25 years and comprise of at least 150 persons for the immediately preceding 5 years. The land must also be available state land. The community must submit a petition signed by 2/3 majority of the residents. Land description and a sketch, along with a written application, must be submitted to the Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs. The application should clearly state the name of the Amerindian community, the number of persons in the community, and the reason for the application. It must be signed by at least 4 adult members of the community. On the other hand, a village applying for an extension to their lands must submit along with the application a resolution by 2/3 majority of the residents present at a village meeting and submitted to the Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs. The application must state the name of the Amerindian village, the number of persons in the village, the area of land which the village already owned, the reason for the application, and a description of the area. The application for extension must be signed by the Tushao, Secretary, and 2 other members of the Village Council. The application must be accompanied by a plan showing the existing village lands prepared by a sworn land surveyor on the basis of a survey authorized by the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission. When the minister receives the application, a written acknowledgement is sent to the community or village. The Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs will then order an investigation within 6 months of receipt of the application. The minister will inform the Guyana Forestry Commission, the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, and the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission of the application and the commencement of the process. Next, the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs will send the description and sketch plan to the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission for preparation of a scaled plan of the area requested by the community or village. The scaled plan is completed and returned to the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs. The Ministry then sends the scaled plan to the Guyana Forestry Commission, the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, and the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission for their indication of whether there are any overlaps with existing concessions. These agencies will also add map layers of other land interests. An investigation is then scheduled by the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, and the preparatory work such as finalizing all logistic arrangements and adequately informing the community or village about the visit is done. The investigation is conducted to collect information such as a village profile and obtain evidence from the community or village based on the application. The investigation team consists of the Ministry, the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, Guyana Forestry Commission, National Tushaus Council, and any other stakeholders that may have an interest, such as the Protected Area Commission. During the investigative visit, meetings are held first with the Village Council or the Community Council, followed by a public meeting with the residents. Field checks are also done for verification of the description and to gather information about the claims made by the village or community. After the investigation, a report is prepared on the visit and a technical meeting with representatives from key agencies is held to discuss the findings of the investigation and make recommendations. The sketch plan is also updated based on information gathered from the field visit. Encumbrances are addressed and further consultations are done if necessary. The report is submitted to the Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs for consideration. The minister will review the report and will decide to approve or not to approve the application. In the review process, the minister considers the following before making a pronouncement: household list, population list, time on land, land use, size of land, customs and traditions, nature of and relationship to land, social amenities, relevant information, oral or written statements, plan, sketches, historic information, other interests, other relevant information. If the application is approved, the minister requests that a cabinet paper be prepared for the issuance of an absolute grant. Upon completion of the cabinet paper, it is submitted by the Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs to Cabinet. When Cabinet approves, the minister files a written application to the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission for an absolute grant to be prepared and pays the required fees. The Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission prepares a survey plan under the Survey Special Provisions Act. This plan is called a Special Provisions Plan and is prepared from existing records and low-altitude aerial photography. The absolute grant is then prepared in the name of the village or community, signed by the President, and issued to the community or village. If the application is not approved, further consultations are held between the community or village and other affected parties. Villages that were issued an absolute grant can then apply to have the land demarcated. The village council is required to write the Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs and request that the land described in the absolute grant be demarcated. The Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs will then write to the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission, informing them of the request and allocate funds for the surveying. The Minister will also request that the process commences. The Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission or a contracted surveyor is selected following due process. The Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs is then informed that the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission or the contractor is ready to commence the survey. The Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs will inform the village about the selected surveyor or surveyors and introduce them to the village. Consultations between the village, the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, and the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission or the contractor are held. The cadastral survey, which is a form of demarcation, is then carried out in accordance with the State Lands Act, the Land Surveyors Act, the Land Registry Act, and other relevant acts. A survey plan called a Land Registration Plan is then prepared by the contracted surveyor or the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission surveyor. After being recorded at the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission, it is lodged at the Land Registry. A first registration letter is prepared by Lands and Surveys and sent to the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs. The Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs adopts the letter and, together with a copy of the absolute grant, sends them to the Registrar of Lands for preparation of a certificate of title. The certificate of title is prepared by the Land Registry in the name of the village and issued to the village by the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs. For more information, visit www.indigenouspeoples.gov.gy or www.gy.undp.org. Call or text 600-3180 or 225-8412. Email altprojectgy@gmail.com. This is a Government of Guyana project implemented by the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs with support from the United Nations Development Program and is funded by the Guyana Red Plus Investment Fund. The Amerindian Land Titling Project, promoting land tenure security for sustainable human development.